So good morning everybody. You can see it's very early in the morning, just gone 4:30. The weather this morning is very damp. There's really some strong signs of autumn coming, but we're not quite there yet. But there's promise of a really nice sunrise this morning. 100% high cloud is what the forecast is giving. So I'm heading up to the Lake District to shoot a classic. So photographs really come without their difficulties and trials and tribulations. This morning finally arrived after almost an hour and 50 minutes of driving. Should have been an hour and 40. Got to Keswick and the road was closed and there was quite a lengthy diversion through the middle of the town, which I didn't take. I took another route that was slightly quicker but a lot more stressful. I didn't really know where I was going, but we're here now. And in terms of weather, well, I don't know. It's not exactly what was promised. We was promised 100% high cloud, and there is definitely high cloud, but there's also quite a bit of middle altitude cloud, so I'm a little bit concerned about that. But I'll get in position and see what happens. So here we have what I've come to shoot, and this is the view from the landing stages at Derwent Water. And what I want to get this morning are these lovely wooden rowing boats with a nice image of cat bells in the distance. It's funny how you have perceptions of a place before you get here. What I had thought is that the boats would be slightly higher up than where they are, but clearly you can see that this is the edge of the lake and this is actually where they are. But in my memory I seem to think that there was some water that could be seen between the boats and the little island in the middle of Derwent Water, and then cat bells beyond, but we're actually quite low down, so there's quite a lot of compression between the boats, and like I say, you can't actually see the open water between the cruisers that are in the middle distance there and the island beyond that. But I do know that it's a nice image. Regardless, it's always a beautiful shot from here. So yeah, get the camera set up, get in position, get the composition aligned, and hopefully wait for those high clouds to light up. There actually looks like there might be some colour in those clouds this morning. There is certainly some nice high altitude clouds and not a lot below them at this location. My concern is that over to the east where the sun's rising, whether it's rising into a lot of fog bank and low-lying stuff that will stop this colouring up, but we'll just have to wait and see. So the waiting game has started once again. It's now 7:15. Sunrise was about 25 to 22, something like that. And we've definitely not had that pre-dawn light that I was hoping for. So the best that I can hope for now is that as the sun rises up, it cuts through that cloud and we get some light on cat bells. Hopefully it will create some mist on the lake. It would be nice to have some light in the foreground, but at this time of year, at this time of morning, we're definitely not going to do that. But the dynamic range of the camera will cope with that, so I'm not too worried about that. I've taken a test shot. It does look pretty flat at the moment, so I'm not overly inspired by what I'm seeing right now, so I really need that good light to happen. In terms of settings, I'm on f16. The shutter speed's going to vary obviously, and I'm on 100 ISO. I'm using the 28 to 45mm lens and I'm on about 30mm at the moment. Got the case filter system on, really enjoying this. Started using case filters earlier on in the year, and I have to say they're fantastic. At the moment I've got the Wolverine 0.9 3-stop neutral density graduated filter, just to hold back the sky, and so it's just a case of waiting now for the light to happen, keeping my fingers crossed that I get lucky and I'm not driven all the way here for absolutely nothing. So fingers crossed. So the light has really not happened for me, unfortunately. I've moved my composition ever so slightly, I've moved in closer to give the boats a little bit more impact. The only difference other than that I've made is I've now put a 6-stop case neutral density filter on, because as the light has become brighter I'm now getting much shorter shutter durations and the ripple on the lake is becoming distracting. It's not ideal, but I'm going to take the shot anyway. It really lacks the light, but here goes. Let's take it and we'll stick the image on and see how it looks. At the moment I've got 25 seconds exposure. I want to focus stack this. I want to focus initially on the boats in the foreground, just by zooming in, moving the focusing point down to the bottom, and focusing on the boat. Take that shot, and now for the second shot, move the focusing point up to the middle distance, somewhere between there and the island in the middle, which should give me enough depth of field to get the mountains sharp. In fact, on the screen on the back I can see the top of the cruiser there and the mountain top, and everything looks nice and sharp. So another 25-second exposure should do it. I will put that on now. Now I just wanted to talk very briefly about this image. Now, when I was there on the day, it occurred to me just how easy this composition was to line up, and that's the reason why we're drawn to these classic locations, because as photographers everything falls into place really easily and we don't have to work too hard to get a nice image. And that's really good when you're just starting out on your journey as a photographer. These are great places to go to and practice. Now I know that as photographers we encourage each other to go and find new locations, and that's really good for growth. But these places particularly are really good, they're very satisfying, and you'll always get a nice image from them. Now granted, you're not going to get anything unique, but what you will get is something that's nice and pleasing, something you can put on your wall, something that you can show your friends and family, and something that you can be fairly proud of. What I tend to do with these locations is that when I go to them, I try to make sure that when I get there on the day that the light is going to be really exceptional, and that's what I aim for when I come to these places. I've done these time and time again. I've done this location many times, and the reason I do keep going back is for that very reason, because I want to get something special from it, and that was my sole purpose on this particular morning. But what did strike me about the classic shot, which this is the compositional elements that really come together to help you as a photographer, to help you learn and grow. And I just wanted to put this image on screen now and just talk about why these classic scenes work so well. So looking at the first image, you can see that everything falls really nicely, and to illustrate that I'm going to talk about thirds first of all. So here we have a grid line which intersects the image into, you've got three lines. You've got a horizontal line running across the top third, and you've got two vertical lines running down the third on the left, which intersects cat bells, and then you've got a third on the right. I have to say I don't really know what the name of that summit is, but I'll put up on the screen now. But you've also got this horizontal line that cuts across really nicely against the far distant horizon line along the bank of Derwent Water. What we're lacking is that last third, the grid line that runs along the bottom, which would have sat just here. Now looking at it, you can see that it's not far off, but it just doesn't quite sit right. The boats are not in the right place, and there's nothing really falls on that bottom third. But certainly the three thirds that you see here all have purpose within the frame, and that in itself, with just that compositional element alone, the image works. Now you can intercept the image into diagonals as well, but if you look here, I put this third on the diagonal of the boats, but it's too high up. It's neither at the third or it's neither at the midway point, so it's not really working as a third. For the third line on a diagonal to work, it would have had to sit somewhere like here, and that would have split the image up diagonally across the frame into thirds. But we didn't have that on the day. But another reason why this particular image works is because it's got the leading lines. It's got the focal point, which you see of the first boat here on the bottom right hand side. Now that focal point is really important in a lot of images to start your eye on that visual journey, and in this case that boat starts your eye on the journey that takes you through to the next boats that are running along the edge of the lake. That's really useful. It helps to lead your eye through the scene. Now that in itself is a real strong compositional tool, and I use that in a lot of my images, but what ultimately you're looking for is that visual journey to continue through the frame, and we've got that here. We're really lucky, and this is why it's such a classic scene, and this is why these classics work so well. This last example shows your eye being taken on that beautiful visual journey that takes you along the boats, it takes you along the jetty, the landing stage, and then over to cat bells and to the mountain beyond. So this image has got virtually everything. It just lacks that last third compositional element on the grid line, but other than that it's got everything. And like I said, this is the very reason why these classic scenes work so well, and this is why you should practice, especially when you're just starting out on your photographic journey. You should practice with these images, because these are the places that really help you grow. Lastly, I just wanted to put on an image from a couple of months ago when I went to Richton's Force, and this when I was shooting this film, the point to the whole image that I took at the end was how it didn't have any of these elements. It had a final element in terms of the waterfall, but it didn't have any of the grid lines, any of the leading lines, and it was struggling. So I'll put that picture on now. So there you go. Now if you remember those grid lines that we saw before, there's no third line. The waterfall sat slightly on the third maybe, and you've got an end point, but what my point was on this film was that you had no visual journey. The rocks are really in the way for the entire scene. The only really thing that you've got is a waterfall at the end, and the water is sort of making its way in a very confused way towards the waterfall, but ultimately it just doesn't work. But when you look at the classic scenes such as this, you really cannot fail. So I would advise and strongly recommend that if you're just starting out on your photographic journey, that you practice with scenes like these, and don't get too worried about people saying to you, you really should find your own subject matter, you should find something new. Yes, do that by all means, but certainly practice on these shots, and don't be ashamed to take them. They're really wonderful places to go to, and they're a great tool to help you with your photographic journey. So that just about wraps it up from me. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a session just at the end to talk through the image. But as always, please subscribe, leave some messages below, and don't forget to ring that bell for those notifications. So until next time, bye for now.